see the New World Order. Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's live edition. It is May 15th, 2013. And tonight I have an epic broadcast for you. I have a very special guest that I am pleased to be bringing back to the broadcast. And when we come back on the other side of the break, because as you all know, the first segment here of the broadcast is always a short, quick segment. But when we come back on the other side of the 1 minute quick break, I'm going to bring my guest on, and we're going to dive right into it. Her name is Julia Davis. You might have heard of her before, maybe not. If you're not familiar with her, after tonight's broadcast, you'll be very well acquainted with who she is and what she's gone through. And you might be interested in knowing if some of you are star chasers or love Hollywood or, you know, the E! News Network and all that kind of stuff, and you love tabloid gossip. Well, there's a bit of a Hollywood twist, I guess you could say, to Julia's story. We'll get more into that later in the broadcast. But I promise you, after tonight, you won't look at things the same way. If you already don't, I mean, obviously if you're listening to the broadcast, you don't, but if you don't know who Julia is, and you don't, especially the police or the feds, DHS agents, government agents, military, the people that work for the powers that shouldn't be. I've addressed you guys the past couple nights especially, about the brutality and stuff. Well, more and more cases of people that work for them getting screwed over. Okay, well, Julia is the prime textbook example of that. You'll see. You'll see. I know. A lot of you who don't know who she is are going, what? What's going on? There's so much. Well, you're just going to have to stay tuned in for the next 2 hours and find out. But I promise you, this whole story and who Julia Davis is and what she's been through is better than any Hollywood movie. They couldn't have written a script. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, without further ado, let me bring up my guest. I think the intro that I gave her last segment speaks for itself. Julia Davis, DHS Whistleblower. Julia, welcome back to the broadcast.
Hi, thank you so much for bringing me back.
There's so much to your tale, and I didn't want to call it a tale because it makes it sound like a false fabricated story when in reality what you've been through, this story, this true event that took place in your life would blow away any blockbuster movie by far. And I know you guys did actually put together a movie about it. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have Julia throughout the broadcast promo the movie too. You can go check it out. It's called Top Priority: The Terror Within. Go check out the website. It's called topprioritymovie.com. If you're listening in the chat room on Federal Jack, you can just scroll down on the right-hand side there. There's actually a widget right on the side of the website for it. You click on it, it'll bring you to the website. I suggest purchasing the film and supporting Julia and her husband who put the film together. Epic movie. I'm telling you, it's a documentary about a true life experience, and you're going to watch this thing, and it's one of those movies that you walk away from like, did that really just happen? So I don't want to waste any more time. I want to let Julia tell her story. Julia, this story, what you've been through is so incredible. How did this start? I mean, you were a DHS agent. You worked for DHS. You were doing your job, what you thought you were supposed to be doing, which was you thought you were doing the right thing after 9/11, and it led to Black Hawk helicopters on your front lawn.
Yes, it's definitely stranger than fiction. And before working for Homeland Security, I was one of those people that thought that if you're not doing anything wrong, then no one is going to be listening into your phones or breaking down your doors and dragging you away to prison. And it was quite a rude awakening to find out that this could actually happen not only to Whistleblower, but just to any American citizen. What happened is I went to work for Homeland Security because after 9/11, I thought, because I speak many different languages, I thought it would be a good asset to protect and to serve this great country from terrorism. So Homeland Security had hired me, and I went to work at the San Ysidro Port of Entry, and that's close to San Diego. It's in between the U.S. and Mexico, and it's an enormous port, the biggest one in the world. And I actually loved my job. I thought it was very interesting. Not one day was like the other. And I ended up working in the port enforcement team that dealt specifically with issues related to people from countries other than Mexico that are coming across the border. And one of the issues we dealt with had to do with terrorism. So we had very special alerts related to 4th of July. And it's pretty interesting because it correlates to what's in the news right now. The Boston bombers apparently had 4th of July as one of the attack dates, or so they said, was later uncovered there was some link to 4th of July. So back in 2004, there was already an intelligence alert that bin Laden and other Al-Qaeda leaders had set that date as a date to cause terrorist attacks and to commit attacks on the United States. And specifically, they also had the videos of some clerics that were talking about coming across the border through the U.S.-Mexico land border because it's so porous. They even talked about going through that tunnel with a backpack and blowing the whole thing up. So we had very specific alerts for July 4th, 2004, that something was being planned related to terrorist countries and coming across the border. And when I came into work, one of my duties was to go through everything that had happened on the previous shift and put it into the statistics database. And I saw that exactly as we expected, there was an unprecedented number of people from terrorist countries that had come across the border on 4th of July, 23 to be exact. And normally we would have no more than 5 to 10 in an entire month. And here we had 23 in the period of just about 10 hours, and nothing was done about it. And it was even worse because there's a very paramount set of procedures having to do with admitting people from terrorist countries in the United States. At least it's supposed to be followed. So their fingerprints are supposed to be taken, their documents are supposed to be copied. The officers are to ask them where they're going, what they were doing outside the United States, and all this, a very serious procedure that would take between 45 minutes and an hour. Well, it wasn't followed in respect with any of these 23. The sheets were left almost blank other than to specify their names and the country that they were coming from. So somebody just essentially flushed all these people into the U.S. without any scrutiny whatsoever. And I took the paperwork to the port director, and he at first seemed as alarmed as I was. But there was no one in Intel working on that date. I guess they were all barbecuing at home, so there was no one to turn the paperwork over to. And as I found out from this experience, Homeland Security would rather have something horrific happen than to be exposed as being ineffective and inefficient. So Port Director did not want me to make a report to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, which is part of the procedure. That's what we're supposed to do if anything suspicious is taking place. But he wanted me to just put the paperwork into the intake box, and the Intel would get back to it whenever they come from their 4th of July celebration. But I went ahead and made a report to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force anyway when I got home from my shift. So instead of investigating what happened and who these 23 people were, my report was closed with no investigation and no action, and instead I became a target because I was at that point considered a whistleblower, having exposed Homeland Security not doing its job on the date that terrorist activity was supposed to be taking place. So within a couple of weeks, I became a subject of about 19 investigations because they had no reason to attack me. When the former Commissioner of Customs, Robert Bonner, got in touch with port management, he asked them if I was under investigation for anything, and that way they could try to discredit me. And once they told him that I wasn't, then they started all of this unprecedented activity, put my family and I under surveillance, and towards the end of the ordeal, when we had them in federal court, there were 54 investigations that we knew about. They had raided my home with a Black Hawk helicopter and a 27-man SWAT team, and they had mistreated my parents to such an incredible extent that my dad had a heart attack, and he did not survive it. They had caused his untimely death. There were also other witnesses that didn't survive these events. One of them was our neighbor who filmed the raid of our home with a Black Hawk helicopter and a SWAT team, and then suspiciously he was found dead in his home, only 25 years old, and his death was never investigated or explained. It just said that it was pending investigation. And as you mentioned, the Hollywood angle to the story as well, since my husband and I had worked in Hollywood for many years, and he has been in Hollywood even longer than me. And we had a lot of friends and affiliates from the film industry. So Homeland Security wanted to use that somehow against me and all of their 54 investigations that they started to conduct. So they made up a story that said that Brittany Murphy told them that I was working on a film during my administrative leave, and in fact, Brittany never said that. So the lie was exposed when Brittany issued a formal statement that Homeland Security was lying in attempting to concoct some false charges against me. So then she became attacked, and anyone that had followed her life and career may know that they have attempted to deport her husband, which was the exact same agency, Department of Homeland Security's ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And she was also followed with Black Hawk helicopters. But, of course, when she mentioned it to the Hollywood Reporter, they had published it. It's in an article called The Last Difficult Days of Brittany Murphy. But they labeled her paranoid and started saying that she must be on drugs and she must imagine that she's being followed by helicopters and wiretapped. So no one believed her when it was in fact happening. So those are just a few small details, a story in a nutshell.
And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, just what you heard her say in the short couple of minutes there, like Julia said, in a nutshell, is crazy. They landed Black Hawk helicopters on her lawn and mistreated her parents to the point where her father had a heart attack and unfortunately succumbed to that. Okay? The neighbor was found dead. The guy that videotaped it, he's found dead. Brittany Murphy, she mysteriously dies. Her husband mysteriously dies. All of this, I mean, I couldn't write this into a movie. I couldn't have come up with this plot if I wanted to, Julia.
Me neither. If anyone wrote that, they would be told to tone it down because it is really too wild. And I think that's what they're counting on. If we didn't have this on videotape, which we do, most people would probably say, well, this is nuts. This didn't happen. This couldn't happen. And which is why it was so important to them to get rid of the witness that videotaped it. Fortunately, he had already given us the tape, although, of course, nothing could ever make this right. The suspicious way that he died was horrific, and his family is still terrified. And my husband and I were thrown in prison twice on false charges and were, in the end, completely vindicated with a finding of factual innocence, and ended up suing Homeland Security, and they decided to settle the lawsuit just a couple of weeks before it went to trial because they didn't want the jury to hear all of the above. But it is well documented in public records, and the evidence is irrefutable. But I shudder to think how many cases had gone on like this that we don't even know about, and someone may have ended up dead or sitting in prison, and no one even knows that this was done to them as a retaliation for something they knew or something they said.
And have you had any type of retaliation since you guys made the film and started speaking out?
Oh, definitely, and it's still ongoing. I find it very curious that they're talking now about the IRS targeting certain groups of individuals, because this has been going on for years now, and we have been audited and continue to be audited by the IRS. Very interestingly, starting with the year 2004, when I made the protected disclosure, and other whistleblowers that we know have also been audited. And they had even audited my attorneys that have initially filed the lawsuit against the Homeland Security. They had audited two separate sets of attorneys. So that's one example of retaliation. And then the director of the film, Asif Akbar, his family's stores were raided by Homeland Security's ICE, of course, the usual suspects. And so it's very interesting that, but they're probably thinking that if anybody learns about it, then they automatically will assume that this couldn't be true. I'm glad that this is finally coming out. It's
epically crazy. It really is. I'm going to cut us off, Julia, because we got a break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Crazy stuff. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Shorter segment. Don't worry, we still have a nice long one on the other side, and then we still have hour number 2, so we have plenty of time. I want to focus on a few aspects of Julia's story. Now, again, if you want to know the full story, the saga, I would call it, go get the movie. It's less than $20, maybe with shipping and handling, it's a couple extra bucks, whatever. You're going to spend 3 times that going and watching one of these Hollywood movies that they pump out lately that really don't have any value whatsoever to them. This movie is done with the same production quality, except it's actual true story, and there's lessons all over the place in this movie. So go over to topprioritymovie.com, go pick up the movie. Topprioritymovie.com. Again, the film, which is the documentary about what Julia went through, is Top Priority: The Terror Within. And I suggest you go get it. I have a copy myself. I purchased it, and it is, I'm telling you, it's one of those movies you walk away from, and afterwards, you literally, it'll bring up your anxiety level, and it's not a bad thing, because that means that, you know, what you're seeing is real, and your body is reacting to it. It's not some Hollywood garbage. I mean, what she went through was pretty scary. I mean, they landed two Black Hawk helicopters on her lawn, 27-man SWAT team. And Julia, you bring up a good point. You said this last interview, and you brought this up during the break. They had more manpower, if you believe the official version of their raid on bin Laden, right, a couple of years ago when they killed him in his compound in Pakistan. Well, if you believe that story and you buy into the official version, they had less guys on the ground to take out bin Laden than they had raiding you. And all you did was your job.
Exactly true. They had 25 for bin Laden and 27 for me, and they only spent around 40 minutes there versus over an hour and a half raiding our home without a warrant, I might add. So it really doesn't add up, but in the way it does, for those that realize that the government's priority has become maintaining a good image versus actually doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, security theater. It's like TSA really doesn't stop terrorists, and groping old ladies and children at the airports doesn't stop people from committing acts of terrorism. It's ridiculous and it's silly, but it's really not for that. It's for other reasons, and I don't want to get sidetracked into that stuff. But your case, your story, really sheds light on a lot of different issues. It's not just one thing in particular. That's why I think it's really important for people to pay attention to what happened to you, especially police, feds, military. You know, all week I've been reaching out, and I do this on other broadcasts, and I know you've heard me do it before, Julia, where I've reached out and I try to, you know, help the police or the feds, the ones that are buying into the garbage, to understand that we're all on the same team. Well, this goes to show them that, look, following your master's orders to violate people's rights and stuff won't get you anywhere, because they'll toss you aside when it suits them and when it's convenient for them. Julia didn't even do anything wrong. She wasn't out on the street violating anybody's rights and causing a ruckus that would bring a spotlight on her. She was inside her office going over paperwork. She noticed things. She started to put two and two together for what she's trained to do, because she was at this border checkpoint. And all she did was notify people, hey, there's something wrong here. Perhaps maybe bad guys could have gotten in. And they landed Blackhawks on her front lawn. They raided her house. People around her, including her loved ones, passed away because of this. And, you know, her neighbor with the mysterious death and everything else. To me, that shows, at the very least, I think you're correct. I mean, obviously, that they don't want people to know what happened. I personally think it's more sinister, and there's more to it than that. Maybe that's, you know, my conspiratorial brain going down that route. But the level of fear tactics and intimidation that they put you and your loved ones and your family and your friends and Brittany Murphy and, you know, her family through, it goes to show that they really did have something to hide. I wonder if perhaps maybe there was a false flag type event going to happen, and you just spotting this, might have created an issue that brought enough light to it that maybe it stopped it. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but you never know. That could be a possibility, and that would explain maybe why they're so pissed off at you. Who knows? I'm going to cut us off, though, because we got a break sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. When we get back, I'm going to give the floor to Julia. I'm going to let her get into detail. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I'm going to break. I had thrown out the question of what did Julia perhaps stop or uncover or be the monkey wrench in the works for that pissed off the powers that shouldn't be, to the point where they would park Blackhawks on her lawn. And I keep reiterating that point because when you see the video that the neighbor shot, nobody would have believed it, by the way. She could have come on my radio show, anybody else's, and said, oh, they landed Blackhawks on my lawn. Nobody would have believed it. They all would have thought she was crazy and just trying to get attention. Perhaps her and BJ were trying to sell a movie. BJ's her husband. No. When you see that video footage in the film, it's pretty intense what they went through. And for what? All she did was her job. So again, police, military, government, they don't care about you. Look what they did to Julia. She was a superstar. One of your own. And look what they did to her, all for doing her job. Which again leads to the question of, what exactly did she uncover? Now, Julia, do you think that you uncovered something big, or maybe stopped something, or, shed some light on it, that something big might have happened?
I think it's a very real possibility, because if you correlate the magnitude of what they did to silence me, it's a very real possibility that something big was in the works, and possibly some kind of a false flag attack was being organized, and by bringing attention to it, I probably disrupted it, because whistleblower retaliation is intensifying over the last decade, but I don't think there's any case where they sent in SWAT teams, helicopters, and by the way, also an airplane, which people will see in the documentary, Homeland Security officials admitting that they dispatched an airplane to conduct surveillance of our house as well. So definitely, when you think about possibly millions that they had wasted to silence me, you have to think that something was in the works that was equally as paramount.
Yeah, like you pissed somebody off. For real. Like the level of what you went through isn't normal. I mean, I know people get harassed, but the people that get the level of harassment that you get, they're the ones that work a nerve or did something that, pissed somebody off, even if you didn't do it, like you knew that you were pissing them off, just doing what you thought was the right thing. It doesn't matter. These people are sociopaths, and you definitely did piss someone off. I mean, how much money do you think in assets alone, or total, from the beginning? Do you guys have a tally of from the beginning of the investigation, from day one where they started investigating you until when it was a quote unquote officially called off? I mean, let's be real. They probably still monitor your phone lines and everything else. But do you have like a tally at all of how much money they spent over the whole amount of time? Because I know you guys had a tally of the SWAT raid, which was an astronomical amount in and of itself. But do you know how much at all they spent in total?
It's in the millions by now. Once we went over a million in our calculations, it's tough to calculate it exactly, but if you think about it, and just from what we know, I'm sure there's plenty that we don't know, but there were over 100 people that were involved in attempted prosecutions and investigations and surveillance. They sent helicopters, they sent an airplane to conduct surveillance. On some dates, they would follow us with as many as 8 agents. I mean, 8 agents for just me or my husband and I. And a lot of times they were driving up from San Diego to Palm Springs, which is nearly 3-hour drive. So they were on overtime. They were staying at luxury resorts. Some of them we looked up were between $400 and $900 a night. So they were having a good time at the taxpayers' expense, and I'm sure they easily spent several million chasing us, if not more. Wow.
And ladies and gentlemen, the reason I bring that up, and I want to point this out, is because if you buy the official story, let's say, of the Boston Marathon bombing, right, and you believe everything the government tells you, and you believe that these guys got in, and they somehow they got through this huge police state security ring that they have, right, and all this stuff. Well, then that shows that there was an complete and utter failure of that system that they say is there to protect us, right? I mean, it seems to catch people smoking pot or, making an illegal left turn, and they beat the crap out of them, but they never seem to get the terrorists. Well, maybe it's because they're focusing, if in fact it wasn't let to be happen or anything like that, if in fact it was just they missed it, well, maybe it's because they're wasting money on people like Julia and her husband and following them around, and wasting agents and manpower and time following them around for doing nothing wrong at all. I mean, to me, if you don't believe in conspiracies, if you don't want to buy any of it, right? But you see Julia's story, you say, okay, it really happened. She's got the video to prove it, evidence. Okay, I believe the Boston bombing story. Don't you think that wasting money on people, again, like Julia and her husband and all these other people and harassing them, don't you think wasting time, money, and assets takes away from real bad guys and allows them to get into the country and do bad things? If you want to just be that simple about it, I personally think it's much deeper than that. But at least this goes to show you that they wasted epic amounts of money and manpower on you guys. I'm not saying that you guys aren't great people and people don't deserve to know who you are, Julia, but I think 8 agents following you guys around just for you to go to 7-Eleven or something like that is a bit ridiculous. And again, for what? For doing what? You're not a coke dealer. You're not an arms dealer. You're not a warlord. The last time I checked, you weren't trying to invoke some sort of violent revolution, and I know you're not related to Fidel Castro or anybody. So, I mean, what did you possibly do to piss these people off to the extent that they would go after you guys the way they did? Personally, I think you did foil something. I mean, we may never know what, but I think you foiled something. And then you brought up another good point during the break. The people that got through that day, does anybody know what happened to them?
No, it was never investigated. As a matter of fact, in the documentary, we showed a copy of the closing report that says that it was closed the same day that it was opened, with no action or no investigation necessary. So they had redirected all of their energy towards shutting me up. And if you think about it, if my husband and I, or just me, in fact, when they raided our home, they thought that it was just me. They saw my mom walk outside the house, and they said, the target is here, let's go. So technically they thought that just I was home. And if I was there, I don't think there'd be anyone sitting here today telling you the story. And I think it was all designed to end right there, because at that point they would have said that there was a shootout, and that would have been the end of it. And all of that was already in the works, because I legally owned firearms. They knew about it, so I'm sure they would have tried to use that to justify a bloodbath there. And they already had an ambulance stationed across the street, which, by the way, when my dad was having a heart attack and kept telling them that he's having a heart attack, he needs medical attention, they told the ambulance to leave, and they wouldn't let him take his medicine. And they kept telling him that his daughter, Julia Davis, is a domestic terrorist. So clearly the ambulance wasn't meant to give any real medical assistance, so it was just there to take us away after it was all over. And also in the beginning of the raid, when they thought that my mom was there were red laser pointers on her forehead. So it was only when she told them, I'm not Julie Davis, did they take them away. So that's, there's a lot of things that don't add up as far as what they would want people to think. And I think they meant it all to end on the day of the raid, and it just did not go according to the plan.
Yeah, if your mother had said yes instead of no, they probably would have popped her right there.
Yeah, and by that time they had dragged my dad out of the house and far away from the house. Now, why would they do that other than to get rid of witnesses? There was no reason for them to do that, and they literally dragged them far away from the house. And it's not anything standard that would happen in any raid, especially where they had no search warrant and no right to be there. And you also mentioned that they don't seem to be solving any real terrorist cases. That's very true. I've been writing about that as a Homeland Security examiner, that the FBI seems to be solving only the cases that they're themselves manufacturing, to the point where the suspects that they are arresting are always thinking that they have the bomb only because the FBI built a device and gave it to them. So they're only setting people up to make it look like they're solving cases. But if you look into it, all of the cases were set up by them from the beginning. So it is a charade, and it's a security theater. And people like me get called the domestic terrorists for simply exposing the government's operations as not being what they're supposed to be, instead of watching what's really going on around them.
And that's crazy if you think about it. I mean, again, you went from being what I would call a model employee to being a domestic terrorist, all for doing what you were trained to do. So, I mean, do we not live in Bizarro world, ladies and gentlemen? You have to see the movie to understand the level and the depth of what she went through. And again, it wasn't just Julia and BJ. Her parents went through it. Unfortunately, her father passed away as a result of the abuse by these thugs, which I personally would try to sue DHS any way I could. I don't know. Well, then again, I don't know how far that would really get you. That would probably be a waste of money. But I mean, I don't know what I would do, Julie. You are a very strong lady, and I give you a lot of credit for going through the stuff that you've been through by these thugs. And then they not only did they take her family members away from her, at least one of them. Her neighbor, he died mysteriously. That their family is shaken up still. You heard Julia mention that earlier. And then Brittany Murphy. Her and her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, if they can get to a movie star, and if you don't really know, like I said, if you're one of these people that loves the Hollywood gossip, go back and go listen to the stories that came out on all these entertainment news networks and stuff, and go listen to them, and go read the articles where they bashed her, and they trashed her in the news and said she was crazy and all this other. She must be on drugs. Well, now you know the backstory. You still think Brittany Murphy was on drugs and crazy and a kooky conspiracy theorist, and she's probably one of these Hollywood bimbos that got drugs. Who cares about her? Well, you should care about her. Because she wasn't any of that. She wasn't on drugs. She had all of her faculties about her. She was a well-loved individual, and she was a human being just like everybody else out there. She didn't deserve to die. But she got caught up in this thuggery. When we get back, I'll have Julia get into it, because we got the break coming up in a few seconds here. But I'll have Julia get into a little bit of detail of how Brittany and her family got swept up into this. But these people are thugs. Absolute and utter thugs. They're bullies. Like the high school bully. We all know how we need to deal with those people. You need to stand up to them. I give Julia credit and her husband credit for having the courage to, even though they went through this, they still had the courage to make this movie and then come out and talk about it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few short minutes. Do not go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, final segment of the first hour, but have no fear, we still have hour number 2. So, I want to explain, well, actually, I'm not going to. I'll let Julia, because I'll slaughter the details and why give it to you third person when you could just get it right from Julia herself. But I'll let Julia explain a little bit of how Brittany Murphy and her family are connected to this whole crazy case. Because I'm sure people are going, Popeye, how the hell is a movie star an actress connected to, and a pretty big name, well-known movie star. How is she connected to this whole thing, and why would DHS take the risk of going after her? So, Julia, you got the floor.
All right. Well, it's there again, stranger than fiction, even the way they involved Britney. What happened is they were searching for any reason whatsoever to investigate me, which is obvious by the 54 investigations they started. So one of the supervisors that was appointed over me when all of this retaliation started, her daughter was trying to break into the film industry. So this supervisor, Susan Botwell, Brittany Murphy was her only connection to Hollywood. So that's why she thought, hey, I'll throw Brittany's name into the ring and say that she told me that Julia was doing something inappropriate, because how are they going to know? And if you think about it, if anybody that's not in the industry would probably think that it's impossible for us to get a hold of a movie star to find out for ourselves. But being in the industry ourselves, that wasn't difficult at all for us to do. But they simply thought that we could not get a hold of her to prove that this wasn't true. So that's how Brittany got dragged in by this cowardly supervisor, Susan Botwell. That was her only link to Hollywood, so she thought, I'll throw her in there. And that was just one of those unlucky breaks for Brittany to get dragged into it for no reason whatsoever, other than that's just the only link that this person had to try to get me into trouble. And Brittany had the heart, more than all this over 100 people that were involved in watching us and trying to prosecute us, who none of whom spoke out, none of whom said, hey, why is this going on? Brittany had more heart than all of them, because she did speak up and she did put it in writing, and she said, hey, I didn't say that to anyone at Homeland Security, and specifically I never said that to Susan Botwell. So she stood up and she did the right thing, and therefore she exposed Homeland Security in trying to set me up. And all the while, the trial against Homeland Security was looming, and Brittany was listed as a witness. So can you imagine the impact of a movie star walking into the courtroom? There would have been cameras. There would have been a lot of media coverage, which goes exactly opposite to what they want. In this case in particular, they have done their best to blackball it and not get it covered by the mainstream media. So having Brittany there would have ruined it all. So all of a sudden, Brittany dies under suspicious circumstances. And if you Google it online, there's 1,000,001 theories where there was speculation that was put out there that she was anorexic, but her autopsy says that she was the perfect weight for her height. So she was not anorexic, didn't have issues with food-related problems. And there was another ridiculous theory that she died of mold, which was also specifically excluded. But the most interesting thing is, and that is still being dealt with, so the chapter about Brittany is not closed, because we are actively pursuing it with Brittany's father to finally get her tissues tested, because her tissues were never tested for any toxins or poisons, even though all of her symptoms before she died would point towards some kind of poisoning, because she had very sharp abdominal pains. Incidentally, five months after that, her husband has sharp abdominal pains as well, and vomiting. And, there was just a lot of things that don't add up, and neither one of them received proper autopsy. So there again, who was in charge over the coroner's office at the time? The same woman who presided over our prosecution, Deborah Wong Yang, who probably told them, hey, we don't want any attention on this case, close it up, cover it up, make it go away. And that's the way things happen in this case. And Brittany's husband was a British national, so lo and behold, they're trying to deport him. And I'm a naturalized citizen myself, originally from the Ukraine, but I have been in the U.S. for nearly 20 years now, and they tried to denaturalize me. That usually is only done to war criminals or, people that have committed serious crimes against humanity, and they were trying to denaturalize and deport little old me. Again, what agency? Homeland Security, ICE.
Julia, I'm gonna pause it right there, and I want you to hold that thought because the break is sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in 1 minute. The break's only a minute long. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is May 15th, 2013. Tonight, my guest, Julia Davis, DHS Whistleblower, already has blown your minds in hour number 1. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, by the way, if you were just tuning in, maybe perhaps you were at work or whatever, and you're only catching the second hour of the broadcast, when the archives are up, which they're up within about 10 minutes of the broadcast being aired, go over to Unbound, and I suggest you go listen to the full broadcast in its entirety, because I promise you, what you missed in the first hour will definitely blow you away. Okay, Julia, really quick, because we have a quick first segment here. We got about 2.5 minutes. Go ahead and finish your thought. What you were saying, where I had to cut you off there, last segment.
So yes, that's what I was explaining, how Brittany got dragged in by Supervisor Susan Boutwell, who thought that we wouldn't be able to reach her to find out the truth, but I guess she didn't realize that. My husband has been in the film industry for ages and had known Brittany since she was little, and he doubled 5 Academy Award winners, and I had doubled 2, Helen Hunt and Angelina Jolie, who happens to be in the news right now. Hats off to her. So we were able to get a hold of Brittany and verify that what was told about us was a complete lie. And Brittany was dragged in for retaliation, and her husband was targeted for deportation and was actually arrested in the middle of the night and dragged away to a facility that was near San Diego. Again comes the San Diego ICE. And also the spokesperson that was making statements about Brittany Murphy's, at the time he was her fiancé and later became her husband. The person that made the statements on behalf of Homeland Security was, again, a representative of Homeland Security's ICE from San Diego. So all of this was completely wild, and Brittany had told her friends, or she thought they were friends. One of them was the editor of The Hollywood Reporter, Alex Van Block, who published an article about Brittany, where he kind of scoffed and Brittany and Simon, thinking that they were wiretapped and subjected to surveillance and followed by a helicopter. And he put that in an article in a way that they were paranoid, must have been high on drugs to believe anything like that. When in fact they were stalked and followed and wiretapped, and everything that they thought was true. And Brittany was even afraid to go back to her home. She wanted to keep staying in hotels because she constantly felt like something was going on in her home. And since there were sneak and peek incursions in our home, they were doing the same to Brittany. So she was absolutely correct to suspect that all of this was taking place, except no one would believe her. And they started to smear her, and that's how she lost the part in Happy Feet and Tinkerbell and some other major parts. So her life and her career was just completely torn apart just because she did the right thing.
Julia, I'm going to cut us off again because we got the break sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Another quick, short break. When we come back in 1 minute, we're going to pick it up right here with Brittany Murphy. Don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So I want to focus some more time on Brittany Murphy. And no, that's not because she was some famous movie star. It's because Brittany was a human being like anybody else, and she didn't deserve to die needlessly because she was dragged into something. And personally, I find it suspicious that she died under really, really suspicious circumstances, and her husband dies exactly the same way, not too many months later, under the same suspicious circumstances. I don't know, but I'm not a big coincidence theorist, if you know what I mean. Okay, I just, something doesn't smell right there. But she deserves to be treated with a little more respect than, oh, she's just some Hollywood bimbo that had drug problems and wasn't eating and she was doing this and that and whatever. She deserved it, move on. No. She was a human being and she deserves more than that. So I want to focus a little bit more time on, what happened to her. Julia, I know you mentioned her father earlier. Is there a way her father, I know he's trying to, get to the bottom of what happened. Is there a way that people could help him? I'm sure this is probably super expensive, and I'm sure the guy's not uber rich or anything, but I mean, is there any way that they can maybe, even with letters of support or, just reaching out to him, help him in any way, shape, or form?
We are getting pretty close to, where there should be some break in the process, but if anything gets set up in the future, as far as any kind of a fund or anything like that, I will let you know. There's nothing like that in existence at this point, but we are working very closely with him, and I think we're very close to finding out what really happened to Brittany, and then after that to Simon as well. So we are precariously close. So we're definitely not closing the lid on Brittany's untimely death, and until we find out exactly what happened.
Has he received any flack, any threats as a result of speaking to you guys and working with you and not buying the official version of events in regards to his daughter's death?
He had noticed that when Brittany would visit him before her death, he would notice surveillance as well. And as a matter of fact, he mentioned that in the documentary. But he's a strong guy, so he was not intimidated. But he did notice that there was surveillance going on, and he's doing his best to, get to what really happened, and we will find out. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, these rats can't run forever, and when they do things in haste and things that aren't planned out 10 years in advance, that's usually done sloppily. And I mean, look, even the best laid plans usually succumb to Murphy's Law, right? So it is what it is. I know I'd asked you earlier about this, but I want to focus on this a little bit. I know you guys had to have gotten some level of harassment more than maybe just being followed around. I mean, have you guys gotten screwed with any other way besides the IRS or anything like that? Have you guys, since the film came out in particular, since you started doing interviews, and I mean, I know you already had a spotlight on you with them beforehand, but now you literally had the spotlight on you and them, and that was your doing, and you were getting your version of events out as well with all the evidence, and it didn't make them look good at all. So since you've come out now, it's been a while, since you've come out and the movie's come out, have you guys received threats, any type of hardcore surveillance, letting you know, hey, we're watching you, anything like that at all, or no?
Yes, there has been, quite a few things that have been happening, and getting emails and calls from people, and having people introduced into our life that talk about putting a nail in our coffin and destroying us. So yeah, there have been threats like that. We try to not empower those people by making them think that we live in fear. But yes, there's definitely been things that continue to happen, and down to their basic things like one of our cars being shot at, and that was never investigated or looked at. And he mentioned the premiere of the movie. They always coincide all of the raiding of our bank accounts, where they seize all the money out of our accounts. As you perhaps remember from Enemy of the State, they always align that with some kind of special events. And they did that for the day of the premiere of the movie, when we premiered at the Academy. And the same day they had emptied our bank accounts and they've done it many times. And they always do that on 4th of July, Christmas. There's always some kind of a special event. And certainly whenever anything to do with a documentary comes out, that really makes them foam at their mouth. And they have actively interfered with media coverage of the documentary as well. And that's why CBS won't air the interview that they had recorded. They were told from high above not to touch the case and never to mention my name. And we actually have their names, the specific producers that were involved, that were told not to ever deal with me. So it's very interesting, but the pressure came from many different directions, and it's still happening today.
And for people that don't know, that was something, a little tidbit I was saving here for hour 2, and that's why I'm glad Julia brought it up. You did an interview with 60 Minutes, and they've become quite famous, by the way, for doing this, where they do interviews with people and then they never air them. They just go in a can somewhere. And you did an interview with them, and I'm sure it'll never be aired or seen, see the day of the light of day. How long did they interview you for, Julia?
They were at our home for over 7 hours, and actually the airing date was set, and I remember the date very clearly because it was my birthday in 2011 when it was supposed to air. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days beforehand, we were told that it would not be airing. And I found out they did the same thing to the big tobacco whistleblower, Jeffrey Wigand, where they recorded his interview, and then they did not run it. And they would not have run it ever if it wasn't for the movie with Russell Crowe, where he played Wigand. Then all of a sudden, all that interview that they've been sitting on for years, all of a sudden they released it then. And so it's very sinister, and unfortunately the same people that control political affairs are very much tied to the mainstream media. So they get to control the vision of people that only rely on the mainstream media for their news. So those people may never find out what's really going on until it happens to them.
Since the movie's come out, have you guys been able to get it into theaters, at least locally, even over on the West Coast there, for screenings, so people can, average Joe can go in and see the movie?
Yes, we did. It premiered theatrically in New York and in LA, and so it played in theaters both here and there. But we obviously are hoping to get distribution on a bigger level. But as you can imagine, this is not a politically correct story, so that's a bit of a challenge. But we're working on getting a bigger distribution, and until that happens, the film is available for purchase online. So we're trying to keep it out there every way we can.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, topprioritymovie.com, topprioritymovie.com. I actually wholeheartedly endorse it. I know actually one of the listeners, Julia, while listening to us during the first hour, they were having issues with PayPal or something, so I guess they're going to try again later. But they're actually purchasing the film just from hearing what you've gone through tonight on the broadcast. So, and I encourage all the other listeners to do that too. Go over to Julia's website and purchase the film. It's $20. Okay, you'll have the movie. You'll be able to do screenings and show people, hey, sit down and look. If you have family, do you have family that's DHS at all, ladies and gentlemen? Do you have family that's maybe in the Coast Guard, maybe Border Patrol, ICE, maybe whatever, some sort of special agent for DHS, whatever? Get them the film. Give them the movie. And see, maybe you should watch this and see how they eat their own. Do same thing if they're a cop or any other federal agency. or even in the military, anyone, buy the film and give it to them. I'm telling you, you'd waste your money on something like of no value, probably done by one of these animation companies or whatever. Spend less on Julia's film and get something of value and see what's really going on. And it's done in high production quality. It's not done like something that was ripped off of YouTube, like 240, little tiny, horrific, crappy graphics. No. This thing is super duper high quality, Hollywood style film. Not special effects, but Hollywood production quality film. But it's a true story, and it's a documentary. And personally, I like documentaries over regular films anyway. I just my taste, my forte. They're not everybody's forte. Julia, have you guys gotten offers from anybody to air it on any networks at all, or no? Because I doubt that NBC or anybody. But are there any small networks that have reached out to you at all to try to air the film?
Well, we're in negotiations with a few different companies that had expressed interest, in the networks as well. It hadn't materialized yet, but we're working on it. So hopefully, I'll have some good news to report pretty soon.
Cool.
And as we're getting ready for the Cannes Film Festival, hopefully things will also finally happen that we have been in talks about for a while.
Well, I know that I know some filmmakers, like when I was talking to James Lane and Chris Emery, they were telling me how they're trying to get their movie up on Netflix. You guys should try to get Top Priority up on Netflix as well. I'm sure you're probably already working on that behind the scenes. You're probably 10 miles ahead of any of us on that. But that would be a great way for people to see your film too, to be able to instantly stream it on Netflix, because it's people love it, and the use of it. They can lay in their bed at 3:00 in the morning when they can't sleep, and a lot of people watch documentaries. And I think your film is one of those that somebody, if they trip upon it, no matter what time of night it is, if they're laying in bed watching it, they're going to end up staying up until 5 a.m. and it's going to be one of those. Dude, I was up last night until 5:30, and I saw this crazy documentary. You got to see it. It's called Top Priority. Holy crap! So, it really does have the potential to have that effect on people. It really does. Every time I watch it, it gets me amped up. I'm like, oh my God, they did to this poor woman and her family.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely agree, and we're trying to get it out in the venues that will make it available to as many people as possible. So, yes, that's one of the outlets that we're talking to get it out there. And thank you so much for endorsing the movie. It's not only a horror story, but also I'm hoping that it will encourage people that you can prevail, and to tell them about some of these tactics that may be implemented against whistleblowers or just anyone that may be critical of the government. And in our case, they had involved other agencies like the Sheriff's Department, and they even had us pulled over in an illegal traffic stop by San Diego Traffic Division on motorcycles, which later was exposed in court proceedings, and they have admitted. So there are so many things that may be happening to someone. And,
Julia, I'm gonna pause this right there because the break's sneaking up.
Sure.
All that thought, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few short minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. So, Julia, during your whole ordeal and the 54, I believe you said it was somewhere upwards of 54 different investigations against you. You had multiple people messing with you. Not only your supervisor, or this, I'm not sure if she was your immediate supervisor, whatever she was, Susan Boutwell, which we'll get into her in a minute. And I know she was messing with you, but there was also two guys named Kauffer and Deal that particularly went out of their way to mess with you and make your life hell as best as they could. In fact, they had their hands tied to that whole SWAT team raid, if I remember correctly from the film. So, who were Coffer and Deal? We got about 4 minutes before we go to the next break, and then we have a nice long segment, so we can continue on. But in a nutshell, who were Coffer and Deal?
Jeffrey Deal and Herbert Coffer were agents with ICE who were in direct contact with the office of former Commissioner of Customs, Robert Bonner. So he directed them to do away with me, and they were spearheading these attacks, and they had planned out, obviously with higher level of approval and supervision, but they had planned out the Black Hawk attacks and all this massive surveillance, and they were pretty much spearheading all of these.
And they were pretty bad guys, right? I mean, like these weren't. I mean, I've seen when you see these guys in the film, they look kind of. The one kind of looks very nerdy. I mean, I'm not picking anybody, but he looks like that nerdy bureaucrat. But if you look beyond his glasses into his eyes, wow, that guy is bad. Like there, you can see obviously he knew. I'll bet you he knows what you interrupted, perhaps, and maybe why they're so pissed at you and why they went, at you the way they did. I'll bet you he knows more than he's letting on, at least, because you could see there's something behind those eyes. They just wow. When you look at them, and then they lie. They flat out lie on video. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, the only way you're going to believe any of this stuff. The only way you're going to believe anything that I'm telling you, the only way you're going to believe anything that Julia has said, is to get the film. Okay? I always urge you to do your own research. Well, in this case, it would be purchasing the film. And I push the film not because Julia's giving me any cut. Okay, she doesn't pay me to put the banner up on Federal Jack. It's not how it works. I do so because I consider her and BJ friends, and I did it to get the film out there and get attention for it. And that's why I plug the film, because it's real. I don't plug stuff that I think is fake. Okay, you all know that. I don't get paid for advertisements on my website or any of that stuff. I don't get paid for any commercials that air on Unbound, and I don't get paid by any of the guests that I bring on my show. When I tell you to purchase something like a book or a film, it's because it's one of those things that you need to have. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of information that you need to have. Instead of wasting your money on something useless, go spend it on something useful. And then it helps Julia. It'll support them, and then who knows what other good things, what other good investigations, what other things they might unearth. Remember, she's still trying to get the film seen. Just being able to get the film seen is a fight. It's ridiculous the amount of control they have, and I'm sure I've never seen personally. That's why I had to ask you, Julia. I've never seen an advertisement for the film in like a movie theater or even, a screening of it other than from what, in the independent media or what you guys have put out or let people know about. I've never seen the dinosaur lamestream media ever mention your story, your movie at all.
Yes, they pretty much made a concentrated effort not to mention it, and the few that mentioned it talked about how it reaches too far, goes too far, and that's only because that's what happened, and it is incredible, and they have acknowledged it as much, but they definitely tried to suppress it, because once you start talking about it, there is no way to explain it away. It is outrageous and unbelievable.
It is completely outrageous and unbelievable. I'm going to cut us off. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, I want to get into Where Are They Now? With Coffer, Deal, and Susan Boutwell. So don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Nice, long segment. Julia, I want to do our own little version of Where Are They Now? So let's start off with, since we were just talking about them, your two friends, Coffer and Deal, and then we can get into Susan Boutwell, who is the lady that is responsible for dragging Brittany Murphy and her family into this whole mess to begin with. So let's start off with Coffer and Deal. Where are they now? What are they up to?
Well, just as I'm pretty sure that that's what was promised to them by former Commissioner of Customs Robert Bonner, that they would be taken care of if they did whatever they could to destroy me. They were promoted. Both of them were promoted. And both of them are still working for the Department of Homeland Security. So even though they were shown in my case to have broken the law, to have conducted warrantless searches and seizures, to have committed perjury because they lied under oath numerous times and were exposed and in doing so, but they were not punished, they were not reprimanded, and they were promoted. And the other person of interest, Susan Boutwell, who dragged Brittany Murphy needlessly into the case and subjected her to all of these horrific events that have followed. Susan Boutwell, when we were making the documentary, we sent her a written request to interview her for the documentary. And as soon as she received that, she sent out as a mass mailing a notice of resignation and was never seen at work again. And in her resignation notice, she said that she's moving out of state and won't be in touch with anyone. So that in itself is very interesting and very telling.
It goes to show that she had something to hide. I wonder if they told her to get out of town and if they just moved her to, some other sort of job somewhere else. And who knows? I mean, they have that whole agency where they do it for criminals. So it wouldn't surprise me if they would do it for ex-feds who are responsible for causing a lot of unnecessary collateral damage, as they would call it, on their end. I mean, she couldn't have made whoever was in charge happy by dragging in, Brittany Murphy and her husband, because now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are attracted to your story just because of the whole aspect that it's attached to a movie star. And I'm not saying that your story in and of itself doesn't bring people in. As I've said all night, the movie and what you've been through is incredible. But you know what I mean. There are certain people that wouldn't even think that the government would ever do that. They think that the world is sunshine and rainbows all the time, and that bad stuff only happens to bad people, right? And they would never see your movie. But then they hear that Brittany Murphy, maybe they liked Brittany Murphy, and then they don't think, they think the media was harsh on her. So then they start reading message boards and they say, hey, what's this? And someone says on the message board, hey, there's this movie where this lady is saying that there's more to it. You should check it out. And then they go, they see a trailer for your movie and they say, what? And then maybe they purchased a film or whatever. Somehow they see the movie and then they're just totally blown away by it. I mean, you cannot see this film and not be taken aback by the level of the levels that they went to. And then these guys didn't get in any trouble at all. They broke the law, which, again, you guys do a really good job of explaining all this. That's why a 2-hour broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, wouldn't do what happened to Julia and her family and everybody else any justice. So you have to see the film because they present, not only do they present what they went through and all the evidence, but then they show you how these guys lied. It was completely and utterly illegal. They broke the law. They violated laws in what they were doing. Warrantless, pretty much warrantless surveillance. Because it's not just wiretapping, everything. So warrantless surveillance, I guess you could use as an umbrella term. They were violating your constitutional rights, and they get promoted. And we see this time and time again, and that's actually kind of scary if you think about it, that these guys that were willing to send 2 Blackhawks to land on your front lawn and treat your family the way they did, and what happened to your father as a result of it, these people are still in power. I mean, are they in higher up positions in DHS that you know of, or you just know they got promoted?
They are in higher positions. As a matter of fact, I believe that Coffer is now one of the people in charge of the Office of Inspector General for Homeland Security. So the irony of that is just unbelievable. But he had proven himself to be exactly what they wanted to be, because internal affairs had become a tool for eliminating anyone that speaks up, about corruption or about the government being ineffective, instead of eliminating corruption, which gets covered up and endorsed or perpetrated by the highest levels of management. So it's very interesting when you think about it, that they have it what they call an unofficial policy in Homeland Security that's called screw up, move up, and that's where people that get caught doing horrible things get transferred, and when they get transferred, they get appointed into higher and higher position every time.
Do you think that there's a portion of, because there's always, bad people, even if there's well-intentioned people in the agency, there's always the bad apples. Do you think that, or did you ever see or notice that there were bad apples inside the agency that would realize this and maybe take advantage of it, and they go, well, I can do what I want, and when I get caught, I'm not only not going to get fired, but I'll get promoted, I'll get more money, and I'll get transferred somewhere else where it's a fresh start, and I can be a little tyrant all over again, and they can just continue going on and on. Like, is there, or maybe that you know of, maybe you didn't see it, but maybe that you know of now, are there, these, bad apples taking advantage of that and using it to their advantage because they're just not going to get in trouble?
Yes, from what I have seen from within, it seems to me that there probably over 80% of people there are good and are there with good intentions, but there's that percentage of bad apples, and unfortunately majority of them are in positions of management, and that's why there are shady things that are happening on the border that are obviously wrong. For example, people are told all of a sudden are all given command not to check any trunks for a certain period of time, or are told to remove all the canines from the border for a certain period of time, where everyone knows that means that something is coming across. But who are you going to tell it to when people telling you to do it are the ones in charge of the border? And anyone who speaks up, gets targeted or removed. So unfortunately, that's a problem, is that not only are there bad apples, but majority of bad apples are the ones that are ruling the roost. And one good example is a former port director of the San Isidro Port of Entry, where I used to work, Daphne Kaganap, who was caught accepting bribes to let drugs and illegals across the border. And guess what? They didn't send the Black Hawk helicopter to arrest her. In fact, when she was still in a position of a port director, they had negotiated her surrender with her attorney for over 6 months. And in the end, when she was facing over 40 years in prison, she did not get a single day in prison. She got away with probation. So that's an example for you. What's an incentive for those people? Probably made millions letting drugs and illegals, and who knows what else, possibly terrorists across the border as well. And all they get in the end is not even a slap on the wrist, it's probation. So is it worth it to them? Yeah, it probably is, because in the end, they're the ones that ended up as millionaires, laughing at the rest of us for thinking that the borders are being protected.
Yeah, and they're not. Again, it's all theater, and what they're. I mean, it doesn't make any sense what they're doing. If there was really this phantom menace of, the oogity boogity men running around out there, and I'm not saying there aren't people that dislike, our foreign policy, or perhaps pissed off at us for the past 12 years of behavior with bombing things and killing people. And I'm not saying there aren't even just in general bad guys out there. There are. But if there was this phantom menace that they say is running around out there to the level that they say it is, and oh my God, we need this huge police state, why are they wasting it chasing people that blow the whistle or that piss them off or whatever, instead of these supposed oogity boogity men that are out there? And the guys that waste millions of dollars don't get punished. Instead, they get, like you said, screw up, move up. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, absolutely. And but these laws, like the Patriot Act, I think they were slipped in just because they saw this perfect opportunity to put in all of these, new lawless set of laws that violate the Constitution. Just because they saw the perfect opportunity to do it. And what it's really designed to do is just to dominate the people and suppress any independent thought and suppress any kind of possible opposition. It's crazy. And even in my case, they even used OnStar to listen to what was being said inside our car and to track our car. And they did that without having any court order or anything like that, just because they are the so-called Homeland Security and they throw the words domestic terrorist very lightly. In my case, they said that they classified me as a domestic terrorist for my derogatory statements that were directed against the government in my articles and in my lawsuit against them. So if that's all it takes to be declared a domestic terrorist, then it certainly applies to you and many other people. And then they take that and they could go to the post office to get the mail cover where all the mail gets directed to them before the person receives it. They can listen to the phones, all under the guise of the so-called war on terror, because they throw out that word that they're watching a suspected domestic terrorist, and everyone just caves in and gives them whatever in the world they want without any questions. And that's why it's dangerous, is because those laws and regulations are not being used for what the people are being told that they were created for.
Well said. Bravo. I agree 100%.
Thank you.
Well said. You're right. The Patriot Act was already sitting in a drawer waiting, and they had the excuse. 9/11 was the excuse for so many things. It now seems, and they rammed this through, and now they can do anything they do. Well, I mean, they really can't. It's not lawful, but in their minds they can, and they just do it. And what really blew me away about your story, and yes, I forgot about this, ladies and gentlemen, was that they had bugged her car via OnStar, meaning they didn't need to plant bugs. Julia would just get in and drive, and they would listen via the microphone in her car. That's creepy. You're talking about Big Brother. You're driving down the road talking to yourself. Maybe you're drinking your coffee. You're cursing at somebody because they cut you off, and there's somebody listening to your every move. And again, for what? Because she did her job. Something not right, ladies and gentlemen. Something very not right. All right, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Do not go anywhere. Final segment coming up. TopPriorityMovie.com. TopPriorityMovie.com. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of tonight's live edition, Down the Rabbit Hole. Remember, all my archives, ladies and gentlemen, are available on my website, federaljack.com. That's federaljack.com. In the upper right-hand side, there is a Listen Live widget that'll take you to the Listen Live page where there is a chat room and then multiple ways to listen. And by the way, there is a page up there for Johnny's show, Broken Man Radio, and one for Joe Joseph's show, the Freedom Link Radio, as well. All three shows here on Unbound Radio, unboundradio.com. Anyway, enough shameless plugs for myself. Final segment, I always like to leave on a positive note. You all know that. And whenever I have guests on, I know my guests like to leave things on a positive note as well. So, Julia, what kind of positive tone message do you have for the listeners in any way, shape, or form? Maybe there's a way to get involved or active to help change things. What say you?
Well, I would like to encourage people, first of all, if they're being subjected to anything like I was, to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that's, not to stop fighting and not to think that things are hopeless, even if they look that way, because, yes, you can prevail. And one of the things that I would encourage people to get involved with is to actively support whistleblowers, and especially national security whistleblowers who currently have no protection whatsoever under the law. And the Whistleblower Protection Enhancement Act that was being proposed was woefully inadequate and again excluded national security whistleblowers from it. So I would very much encourage people to get involved with the National Whistleblowers Center in Washington, D.C. I believe them to be the only big organization that is legitimately helping whistleblowers and telling things like it is, instead of handing out transparency awards to the administration that's prosecuting more whistleblowers than have ever been prosecuted in American history. So I would encourage people to support national security whistleblowers, because those are the people that try to bring light to what the government is doing to your average American citizens for simply speaking out and standing up for what's right. And another issue that I have become familiar with is through the judicial system, is that there should not be indefinite appointment of federal judges as there is right now, because what happens is like what happened in my case, where the judge sitting over our federal criminal case was the best friend of the former head of customs, Robert Bonner, and no matter what we did, he would not recuse himself. So, there has to be some legal changes to get rid of immunities for judges and impose term limits for judges, and also to hold the government accountable for selective and malicious prosecutions when they engage in that. So I would encourage people to get involved in that, and most importantly, to be outspoken, because that is the only thing that the government is afraid of. That's public opinion and our voices and our votes. So I would encourage people to stop watching Kardashians and do something to make the difference.
Well said. I agree. Turn that crap off. If anything, unplug your cable. Turn that off. You only need the internet, because you can stream. If you really need to watch anything, you can stream whatever you need off the internet, right? And then just keep your TV. Everybody's like, oh, but you should put a hammer through the television. No. You use their mind control device to unlock people's brains by purchasing things like Julia's Film, taking the DVD and putting it in the DVD player, and then having screenings. You do it with other documentaries as well. And you use their tool of mind control to unlock and reverse some of the retardation of society. It really does work. And that's why there's this mass awakening, and that's why they're getting pissed off, and they're afraid, and that's why things are starting to speed up. I say all the time that their ever-encroaching police state is their physical manifestation of their fear of everybody's true potential, and that really is my true analysis, and I really do wholeheartedly believe that. Not only do I believe it, but to me that it is what it is. But I don't want to digress too much. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're running out of time. Julia, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and many thanks to everyone who is listening and paying attention. And we notice and appreciate everyone who contacts us and who cares enough to get the film. And lots of love and blessings to all of you, and we appreciate you for having me on, and having the guts to tell it like it is. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Julianne. Again, thank you for coming on, and thank you for standing up and doing the right thing and having the courage. You have a bigger set of balls than most men. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the film, topprioritymovie.com, topprioritymovie.com. I will catch you all again live tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm out of here. Don't forget, I love all of you, every single one of you, even the people that hate me.